Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Toffee Blues YouTube channel. We are doing the Toffee Blues podcast. We haven't jumped on this and done one for a while. Probably the best decision, really, because things haven't been very good at Everton. Things have took a really sour turn in recent weeks, and which I'm sure everyone's aware of. I'm joined by Mike Richards from the Unholy Trinity podcast, who's jumped on with us today to discuss a lot of the issues that are going on at the moment, and we're going to be doing our best to sort of dissect them in the best way possible. Obviously, at the time we're recording this, an open letter has just been released by Farhad Moshiri to the fans forum, which I'm sure a lot of people will be familiar with by the time you come around to listening or watching this podcast. But first of all, of course, let's have it right. Everyone's quite aware of what's been going on recently at the club. There's a big campaign has been launched, the NSN Now campaign, which is basically a collection of fan groups have come together and basically aired their disapproval at the way the club's being run, which it's hardly been a secret for a while now, the feeling of fan discontent. And it's just been amplified in recent weeks on the internet. I'm sure everyone's seen protests and banners planned for the game against Southampton at the weekend. So yeah, Mike, I'm gonna bring you in, mate. First of all, what's your sort of take on the whole movement as a whole before we jump into the response, which has came out in the last few minutes, really, at the time of recording. It's good to see the fans really are clubbing together, and seems to be a bit of unity, and there's a real common goal here, isn't there?
Yeah, that's totally justified, isn't it? Let's get it right. You know, the club was served a warning last season, that's for sure. You know, we never wanted to be in that predicament again. We find ourselves in that predicament again. And you know, that was the results of so many years since Farhad Moshiri has come in, with the best will in the world of obviously flashing the cash and trying to throw money at the issues that we had and trying to improve us by simply saying, well, here's £100 million, go and buy whoever you want for whatever you want. You know, as much as maybe the intentions were good, the result has been poor. And let's get it right. You know, if we go back to when Farhad Moshiri came in, we're in a worse position now in terms of personnel, in terms of position in the table than we were then. There's been no progression on the pitch in any way, shape, or form. We don't compete particularly well in the cup competitions, and in terms of his return on his investments, it's going to be a negative return at this moment in time. And surely he can't be sitting there happy at what's gone on. And you know, I think out of a lot of sort of fan podcasts and fan groups and things like that, us as a collective podcast, we've never really addressed this situation, to be honest. We've never sort of joined that conversation. We have obviously private discussions ourselves. We've always been for stability. We want the club to make sure that a manager is backed as best he can. And the club certainly needs to stick by a manager to ensure there's some kind of stability. Now, that's not me saying that Frank Lampard is immune from criticism, shouldn't face the sack if results don't improve, etc., because there's always a breaking point. But certainly where we are at this moment in time, you know, we're in such a poor position, and the fan groups that have got together, ourselves, we've signed up to the campaign as well. We all believe that we are certainly at that breaking point now. A lot of issues do stem from the fact that the board members who are currently in place are not fit for purpose. Certain board members haven't got any kind of credentials to give them a place on that board. That is for sure. And if Farhad Moshiri wants to see this club have any kind of success and get any kind of reward for his investments, then he needs to appoint the correct people and the right people to the relevant posts. And like I said in an article I wrote a couple of days back, this Everton board is not a Premier League board. You know, it's romantic, and it's so far from being ruthless, it's untrue. And we've got to get with the times. We've got to behave like a club who wants to compete and not just become this museum that Farhad Moshiri alluded to when he first came in.
Well, that's exactly right, isn't it? You know, I think you've got to look no further than clubs like Brighton, Brentford, and even Newcastle within the last 12 months. You know, these are clubs who, for so many years, you traditionally have Everton placed as a far superior club, and quite rightly so. You know, our statistics spoke for themselves. We were regularly competing at the top of the table, challenging for Europe. And obviously, it just seems when Mercedes came in, there's just been Everton have stagnated and stood still, whilst the clubs like Brighton and Brentford have had adequate people at the top of the club, running them the way a 21st century Premier League club should be, and they've reaped the rewards, and they're now moving forward, as we see in the Premier League table and how they perform week in, week out, and how the team and the players and the fans are all very much invested in what they want to do. And then you look at Everton, which is obviously horrible because it's our club, and you just couldn't see a more sharp contrast, could you, with the way we're ran, and it's just catching up with us now. Years of standing still and being mismanaged, it's just all starting to, the chickens are coming home to roost now, and you have to look no further than the Premier League table. Look at the money that's been wasted, the types of players that are turning out for Everton these days. It doesn't take a genius to work out that, yes, the fans are totally justified, which is what you rightly said, Mike. It's totally justified movement, because we are being shortchanged by the club, and something has to happen. And, the hope very much is that with the momentum that this NSN Now campaign has sort of gathered in the last few days, the last week, we hope that, this could maybe act as a catalyst for some change. But obviously, at the time of the recording, in the last 10, 15 minutes or so, and has been a response to the fans' forum from Farhad Moshiri. And, without going off ranting and raving and everything, which I suppose is very easy to do, I think for me, reading some of those comments, I do feel very disappointed. What about you, Mike? I assume you've read the response.
Yeah, it's just a very, very substandard, poor response. Probably not written by Farhad Moshiri. It's probably just his name's being put on the bottom of the letter. It's some kind of just bog standard templated response. But I think maybe there's an underestimation of the feeling of the fans here. People will look at it and say, well, we've been here before, when obviously there was protests there that happened last year. Obviously, the 27-year campaign that have now been rebranded to this NSNOW campaign. I think they just think that it's just going to go away. But I certainly think, like you said at the start of the show, fans, fan groups, whether content creators, whatever it might be, are united. You're now seeing this getting national media coverage straight away. When it came out, Sky Sports were all over. Not only the story of the fans' discontent, and the letter that was written to Farhad Moshiri a few days ago, but also this response to the Everton Fans Forum tonight. It was on there straight away. You've seen the echo of all publications. A lot of fans have said for years, why aren't you doing for us what you did for Liverpool Football Club when they had issues with Gillette and Hicks all those years ago? And you saw their headline, silence is not an option. And you look at that, and I think, to be honest with you, they would have been better off staying silent than issuing what has just come out, because all that will do now, and all it has done, is rile people further, give people some more fuel for the fire on Saturday. And when it comes to obviously, we've seen loads and loads of banners that are being made for Saturday, because I think they raised about £5,000 the last time I checked, in terms of fans donating to the cause. There's going to be a lot of banners out there. There's going to be the sit-in protest immediately after the game against Southampton, and that will gulf anything that we saw last season by a lot. There's people who, and by the way, not everyone can stay. Let's just understand that, and let's not get on people's backs for not staying. Because
absolutely,
I've got to catch public transport, got to try and get home, family commitments. Listen, it doesn't mean people don't support it, but the numbers that will be there on Saturday after the game will be big. Regardless of the results, we're all there to back the players, give the minds our support, and hopefully get 3 points. Win, lose or draw, it will not make any kind of difference to what's going to happen on Saturday, in my opinion. And they've underestimated, I think, that the strength in which the supporters are united, and the strength in which we hold our belief that there needs to be changes at board and executive levels at Everton Football Club.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're dead right in what you're saying there. You briefly touched upon the protest that we saw last season, but I agree with you. It just seems different this time around, doesn't it? It does feel very different. It seems to be amplified by the media, by former players, and there seems to be a unity within the fan group that perhaps we didn't see last year with the protests. And I agree with you. I do think it does feel very different. And I personally, I I intend to stay behind on Saturday after the game. Again, all supporters completely are respected for what they choose to do, absolutely 100%. But it all just buckles down to the bottom line is we all just want to bet at Everton, don't we? And that's all it means. And if this movement or these sort of notions can help in any way, then absolutely people will support that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting on Saturday. Definitely amplified after what has been released this evening. So yeah, just put the board talk aside for one moment, and we can talk about matters on the pitch. Obviously knocked out the FA Cup last Friday. I don't think we were expecting much in terms of going to Old Trafford and winning by any means, but it's a difficult one, isn't it, Mike? Because we didn't play all that badly, did we? We saw Lampard go back to five at the back, which is seen to be the sort of root of a lot of our more positive performances. Just very quickly, what was your sort of take on Friday night? Because obviously it's always disappointing to go out the FA Cup, but the 3-1, I think 3-1 definitely flatters Man United. But the signs were there that if we set up the right way, then maybe there's a chance that this Everton side can stay up.
Yeah, I think there was two major things that I took from it. Was one, he's gone to the five at the back. I was baffled why, by the way, he didn't do it against Brighton. Yeah. I couldn't believe it when I saw the lineup as I was walking to the game. And I was walking down with one of the lads from the podcast, and me and him were both in the belief when we recorded before the game that he would stick with it, because he had to show Brighton the same respect as he showed Manchester City, as obviously he showed United since. And I think that is the way forward, whoever we're playing, because the very least that you need to be doing is be solid at the back and trying not to concede the goal. And if you get a 0-0 draw, you get a 0-0 draw. Listen, against a side like Brighton, it was so comfortable. The transition from Potter to De Zerbi has been seamless. They're a very good football side. Everyone knows their role. Show them respect, and then try and be solid and try not to concede the goal. And we were a little bit naive, a little bit of a lack of respect, and that for me was on the manager in terms of how he set up. He seems to learn from that against a good, let's get it right, a good United side, very good manager. They're in a rich vein of form. You've got players like Rashford who's turned things around as well. You've got Casemiro who absolutely bosses the midfield. And Everton gave a really good account of themselves in terms of, okay, they're flat United. No way it was a penalty. It was soft as they come. If that's the other way around, we don't get it. It's dead simple. How the referee wasn't booking some of their players was just incredible. I just couldn't believe some of the decisions that weren't going our way in terms of bookings. And, it's just little things like that always frustrate me. But in terms of the performance that we put in, what has helped us there is that they were able to relax a little bit. It was a one-off game. Winner takes all, of course. But there was no pressure there because, like you said, we went there thinking, we ain't going to get nothing from this. Not going to be taking them back to Goodison Park for a replay. Not going to win the game. And I thought at times we looked a decent side. I thought Onana looked settled in the middle of midfield. Sitting in front of the back four, great in the tackle. We've seen it already, but looked great in the tackle. But also, switching the play, going wide, doing the simple things. The Demarai Gray, when he takes responsibility and he's confident, he's a different player. The second goal that was disallowed, so unfortunate. Lovely football. And that's what they can do. When you've got Dom up there, big and strong, laying the ball off, making sure then he's getting into the box. Demarai Gray carrying the ball at pace, little one-touch stuff. They can do it, but I think because there was no pressure of Premier League football, that also helped. What we need to do now is set up five at the back again against Southampton. I don't care what anyone says. We've got to do it, and then try and play similar kind of football and take the shackles off as and when you can and play without pressure. Now, it's difficult. It is difficult. We're nearly halfway through the season. We're in the bottom three. But, we're at home. We're against a side who is struggling as well as we are. And the crowd will be right behind them. So I think what they've got to try and take, it's got to be a game at a time. It's got to be, okay, we're going to go with this setup. You know it from last season anyway, because we did it numerous times last season. We played it a few times this season. It's a good mixture in terms of pace and also experience at the back. Big misses Alex Iwobi, but the core will sit okay in that midfield three as long as we leave Onana in front of the back four. And let Demarai Gray play off Dominic Calvert-Lewin, let him switch sides, and then you've got Anthony Gordon on the bench to come on a little bit, more guile and a bit more of an attacking threat than what we've seen previously. So I go into the game with hope, of course, but we've got that United game should have shown that we can set up in a way where we look okay on the attack as well, because we created a few chances ourselves. And it should also have given the players and the managers a little bit of confidence, because the fans stuck with them. The fan reaction at the end of the game was good. We're backing them. And overall, I thought it was a decent performance, and 3-1, like you say, flattered a very good Man United side.
Yeah, I suppose so. And let's talk about the manager for a second, Frank Lampard. After the Brighton game, very much, I think a lot of people expected him to lose his job after that. That hasn't been the case now. Frank Lampard, I think a lot of people want it to work for him. They really do. But I think especially this season, he's not been helping himself. He's not making a very good case for himself. In the last fortnight, we've played both Manchester clubs. Obviously, we played Manchester City on New Year's Eve. Very similar performance against United, very similar setup. And it was a great performance, and we got a very good result. We then saw, he wanted to revert to type, the 4 at the back, the 4-3-3 against Brighton, and it just completely didn't work. We then went to Old Trafford a few days later, similar sort of setup, and okay, yes, we got beat, but that same sort of that spirit was there in the performance anyway. And let's not forget, 2 of Manchester United's goals were a penalty and an own goal. So it was a very much it's a similar performance to the City one. And it's almost like Lampard has another chance to get it right this time. He's got a Southampton game at Goodison, and he can't do what he did against Brighton. It's a similar sort of scenario where he's came in off the back of a difficult away game where he went for the 5 at the back. And I think if he doesn't go for 5 at the back and he tries to do this 4-3-3 again, and if the result doesn't go his way, then he's just got no one to blame for himself, Mike, the manager. Because for me, he's had time and time to learn his lessons and right these wrongs, and his naivety just seems to be letting him down so much. So do you think a lot of Lampard's really just got to seriously take a good look now and put his principles aside, which we saw last season? Because otherwise, I really struggle to see how Frank Lampard will survive if we don't win this game on Saturday.
Yeah, you've got to think that if we lose the game, he'll be gone regardless. Like I said, I'm an advocate for stability. I've always backed Frank Lampard. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and defend his win percentage, because it's not great. Of course, it's not. I think that I appreciate what he's trying to do. Like you say, at times I think he's a bit naive. Most definitely, I think sometimes his setup, we look at it and listen, we're no experts, but if you compare me to him and what have you, but you look at the Brighton game was obvious for me. It was obvious we had to stay with 5 at the back, and it worked. So yeah, he's under. Listen, whether I'm for stability or not, or whether I back him or not, he's under immense pressure. Let's get it right and lose against Southampton, and there's no way that he will keep his job. I was surprised that this board and Farhad Moshiri didn't let him go after the Brighton game, because knowing exactly how they operate, I think it was expected. And then to be operating a system where you're going game by game, and there was rumours that, well, if the United performance isn't great, then he could be gone. Then you can't work that way. You've got to have this is another issue with the board, isn't it? You've got to know exactly what you're doing. You've got to make cutthroat decisions. If you feel that you've made a mistake appointing Frank Lampard, for example, then you've got to eat humble pie and you've got to let him go if you think that's the right decision. Now, the Farhad Moshiri said in his letter that he backs Frank Lampard. Which is no, I've got no issue with that, because he's talking about stability and what have you. But we all know that if we do lose on Saturday, then that letter and that comment means absolutely nothing, because he will lose his job, and he will understand why he's lost his job, because results have not been good enough. And I do wonder at times whether, like you say, whether he thinks that he's got to go with this 4-3-3 because it'll allow us to be a bit more of an attacking threat. You can't manage to please fans. You've got to manage what you've got. If you've got to change your system to grind out a result, then you change your system. It doesn't matter what I say, what you say, what anyone says in the ground, whether they boo, hiss, whatever. You've got to do what is right for the football club and was right to get a result from that particular game. And it doesn't bear thinking about basically what happens if we lose this game on Saturday. This is a, I know it's fairly early in the season. Let's not get carried away, but this is as big a 6 points as you're likely to see at this stage of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if Everton get beat Saturday, there'll be riots, mate. There'll be absolute riots. Especially after what we've seen today as well. But yeah, one thing Everton certainly do need is goals, and it's been no secret that Everton have been desperate need for a striker or some kind of attacking players. At the time of recording, we're 11 days into January now, still nothing on the transfer front, and it's very, very frustrating. We all know that the need for some kind of attacking impetus in this side. The overriding theme this season, we've mentioned this on countless podcasts and shows this season, that, there's just no goals in the side. And that's obviously a massive problem and one of the contributing factors to why we are where we are. I have no doubt that Lampard wanted to get these players in, but are you surprised, even by Everton standards, that something wasn't in the pipeline? Yes, I know it's a very difficult window to deal in, and I know that the club is hamstrung with finances at the moment. But, when you look at other teams around us strengthening, you like Southampton, Wolves, Forest, the teams who are definitely going to be making moves to try and secure their Premier League status. And, it seems very much at the moment like the club aren't really that active in the transfer market. Of course, there's links to Danjuma from Villarreal, who we'll come on to in a moment, and a few links there with Danny Ings as well, who would be a good addition in my opinion. You look at Liverpool, they had Gakpo in on the 1st of the month, obviously evidence of forward planning. Other teams, they've got their business done quite early, and for Everton, I'd make a case say we were one of the most urgent cases in the league for needing some kind of attacking threat, and nothing's happened. So are you holding out much hope that we'll see some changes in the attacking line in the coming weeks? And you're surprised that nothing's been done already?
I'm surprised, no, because history tells me not to be surprised. Should they have got someone in early? Yes, because you at least then get a bit of a boost from having a new player, especially an attacking player, and it gives the fans a bit of a boost as well. They are trying to do something early, because you can't afford to let games go. You can't afford now to be saying, well, we get someone in at the last week of January when you're playing, Southampton and West Ham in consecutive weekends. Let's get that right. And then obviously you've got the likes of Arsenal coming, you've got Liverpool coming up, Aston Villa. It's the games come thick and fast, and they're all as important as each other. And this is a winnable game at the weekend. And I was surprised in the sense that they haven't made some kind of statements in terms of showing that they are active in the transfer window. It tells me that there isn't a great deal of money there, to be honest.
Yeah.
The look on, we saw Nathan Broadhead go for about $1.5 million to Ipswich. There's talk of Tom Davis potentially going to Rangers. Obviously, we let Rondon go, which is wages off the books before the window even started. So I'm sure there's some kind of wiggle room there, but I think we're still being overly careful. And it's quite clear that we can't pay big upfront fees for players, hence why we're hearing all about potential 6-month loan deals with a view to permanence. And, Aston Villa was saying he wanted a permanent deal for Danny Ings, and Everton saying, well, we can do a loan with maybe a view to a permanent. So it shows there's not a great deal of money there. And that's the frightening thing, is that we could be getting to the back end of the month and bringing in, say, a couple of players on loan. But by that time, we're trying to get through these games with the squad that we've got and with the attack that we've got, which is misfiring. It's, outside of Demai, he scored 5 goals, and that's not a great return. But outside of him, he's the only player for me who, when I go to the game, when he gets the ball, I think something can happen here. Yeah. Because he's pace. Now, he's inconsistent. Don't get me wrong, he's inconsistent. But we've seen the kind of goals that he's scored since he's been at the club. We've got the Arsenal goal last season, the City goal the other week. He's an exciting player when he carries the ball. And when he takes responsibility, sometimes he needs to be more selfish than he actually is for me. But besides him, Dom struggled for fitness and looks off it. Looked a bit better against United, to be fair, and unlucky not to get his goal. Anthony Gordon's had illness, and he's never, not prolific. Neil Maupay doesn't pose any kind of threat in this particular system. So there's not many goals in that side, as we found out. So Everton, for me, should have done a bit of early business obviously clubs are waiting to hold out for the best deal that they can get. It's a poor window. January is never ever a good window anyway. And is Everton as an attractive proposition as other Premier League sides? We're seeing other sides getting players in. Aston Villa, for example, slightly higher up the table. Like your Brightons, your Newcastles, they will appeal more to players than it will be to Everton and looking to stay in the Premier League. So a lot of reasons why, but disappointing is what I'd say, because they've had so long to get these deals in place since the last window closed. They had time when the World Cup was on. There was a lot of time to sort these things out, and it's another reason or another case for the fan groups, the fans, to sort of throw at the board and say, here's another example. You're throwing us under the bus as a football team. And we could find ourselves in a really perilous position come the end of January before a player even comes through the door. So, yeah, not surprised, but certainly disappointed as us not bringing anyone through the door at this moment in time.
Yeah. Again, I completely agree. It just gives the fan base another stick to beat the board with more than anything else, because it just highlights a lack of forward planning. And obviously the issue that's been there for a couple of years now, how we're hamstrung with finances, that we can't buy players like a Danny Ings on a permanent deal. So just quickly on the two forwards which we have been linked with, Danjuma from Villarreal, which I think is a name that a lot of people would welcome. He actually has quite an impressive goal scoring record for Villarreal. Obviously, he had time in the Premier League before with Bournemouth. If this is a deal that we can get over the line, is Danjuma someone who you'd like to see come in? Something maybe we can get over the line? And also, just on Danny Ings, maybe it's a little bit unlikely of the two, unless Villa's stance changes towards the end of the window. What your thoughts on Danny Ings? Is he someone you'd like to see? A bit of a proven goal scorer in this league. What do you reckon about those two targets?
Yeah, I mean that Danjuma, it's one of them, isn't it? Where we saw a little bit of him at Bournemouth. Can't really form much of an opinion on him. He hasn't done too bad at Villarreal, out of favour. You've got to sort of ask why, I suppose. Yep. So that's always one of them, isn't it? But any player that other clubs are open to selling, or let him come on loan, you've got to question why. I mean, he's got the right, probably the attributes are good enough in terms of he's fairly big and strong and athletic. So I understand why we're looking at that profile of player. It always concerns me when players come in from leagues outside of this country in terms of adjustment time. That's always a concern. I mean, people will argue, he's been here before. He has, but I think he played 11 games. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure so before he played 11 games for Bournemouth. So not a great sort of measuring stick as to whether he'll do well or not. Danny Ings, I understand it. I understand that kind of link. He's a goal scorer. It stops him scoring against us, which is another thing, another positive.
Yeah.
He's always a pain. He scored a good goal against us this season, didn't he? At Villa Park, if I remember.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, second game finish.
And he's one of those players who I always thought, I don't like playing against him. He's always likely to score. So if we're using that as me rationale for signing, then yeah, I'd get him in. If for the right deal. I mean, they're quoting £25 million or something ridiculous, and 125 grand a week. It's just nonsense. I understand that this needs their player. They can ask for whatever they want. But if he's out of favour and they're open to selling him, then it's got to be obviously the right deal for the club. Whether they would loan him to potentially a rival, Villa aren't doing particularly well. I know they brought Emery in. They've had a little upturn, of course. But Villa could easily get sucked back in again. I'm not sure, but all depends, obviously, how Emery sees Danny Ings in terms of whether he's going to utilise him or not. But I'd be open to that signing. I can't see us getting both those players. We certainly need to look at the wide attacking options as well and get a bit of pace. And I mean, Alanga's the one, which looking at late in the window. If they're going to get this Weghorst in, then maybe that creates a bit of space for Alanga. But I mean, I haven't seen a great deal of him. I've got to be totally honest. But judging by United fans, they haven't been too impressed by him either. So can these players come in and make a real difference to Everton? Out of the three, probably Danny Ings is the only one that you'd say he's more likely to. But it doesn't blow me away in terms of the names that we've been linked with at this moment in time, to be honest.
Yeah, you know, Danny Ings, he's the one who you probably like, but of course, because he's probably the one that could be the most effective for Everton, he, you know, in turn is proving the most difficult one to probably get out the three you mentioned there. You know, Alanga, yeah, I think there's a good chance that that's happened. But again, it just goes back to this board, how we've knew the problems that we've faced up front for so long now, even going into the season, even the back end of last season, when we were, you know, Calvert-Lewin's injury record, Richarlison was leaving. And then, of course, you know, Calvert-Lewin getting injured on the eve of this season, 6 weeks in the World Cup, and the best he can come up with is relying on Man United to get someone else, so that we may have a chance of getting Elanga on loan. It begs belief. It really does at times. It really does. Yeah, just quickly, just before we wrap things up, obviously massive game at the weekend. You know, we alluded to it earlier in the video. You know, if there ever was a 6-pointer, it is this game, Everton versus Southampton at Goodison Park, a fixture marred by controversy and protest, rightly so. It's gonna be a spectacle in itself for those reasons. But you know, we've just got to, you know, block that out for 90 minutes and really get behind the boys, haven't we, Mike? Because, you know, I think there's a coach greet planned. You know, fair play to everyone who's organising that and everyone who'd like to get involved with that as well. But yeah, more than anything else, we just need 3 points. I can't remember ever needing 3 points so badly. Our last win came in the middle of October. You know, we're a fair way bit through January now, and I can't remember a time where we've needed 3 points so badly. It can, I just, I can't imagine the scenes if we get beat. Well, I can, and it's not a pretty one. It's just vital, isn't it, Mike, that we just get behind the boys Saturday and just try and get them over the line.
There's got to be a separation. I've said this for the last week or so now. This campaign is great, and we back it. We all back it. Well, you know, I can't speak for everyone, but there's a huge percentage of the fan base that we're seeing who are united behind this. But you've got to have that separation for 90 minutes. You've got to just back the manager and the players, get behind them, roll them on, show them that, you know, we're on their side. It's not about the players. It's not about the manager as such. The manager, obviously, he's higher up than the players in terms of our issues, I'm sure. But it's about making sure that we get this side out of the predicament we find ourselves in for the second season on the spin. You know, it doesn't do us any favours, and it's to our detriment if we don't get behind the players. It's as simple as that. And I know the fans will, as you say, coach greet is being planned. Going back, unfortunately, we've got to go back into our minds and tap back into how we were feeling last season, you know, and what we were doing in terms of getting the players over the line in some of those games at Goodison Park. So we've got to do it all over again, and we'll do it. We'll be there early, and we'll keep going. And we've just got to push them along. If we go 1-0 down, we keep on pushing. We can't get on the players' backs, because all it serves to do is put them under even more pressure, and it's to our detriment. So the fans will be great on Saturday, not for the board, maybe not before the game or after the game for the board. But you know, we've got every single right to voice our concerns and issues, because it seems at this moment in time, between us and the people in the suits, the only ones who seem to care if this club goes down or not is us. You know, so we'll voice our concern. We're the only constants at this football club is the fans. You know, so we've got every single right to fight for our club, and if we feel this is right, which we do, then we've got to stick by it. And as I say, to think they've underestimated the discontent within the fan base, judging by the letter that was released this evening.
Absolutely, Mike. And on that note, I think we'll leave it there. You know, I think that is a fair point to leave it on. I think the board have 100% underestimated the Everton fan base, 100%. And we know for 90 minutes we've got to get behind the team. We need 3 points more than anything else. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting run on Saturday for sure. So yeah, we'll leave it there. Big thanks to Mike for jumping on with us. Be sure to check out the Unholy Trinity podcast as well if you haven't done so already. Massive thanks for coming on. Be sure to drop us a like, subscribe if you haven't done so. And of course, this podcast will be available wherever you get your usual podcasts. So yeah, here's hoping with 3 points on Saturday, because by God do we need them. So yeah, thanks for watching the Toffee Blues or listening to the Toffee Blues, and we shall speak to you next time. Thank you very much.